At 6:47 a.m. on December 18, 1944, Staff Sergeant Thomas McKinley watched his best friend die for the stupidest reason imaginable. Corporal Eddie Martinez, 22 years old, El Paso-born, planning to open an auto shop after the war, was crouched behind a stone wall outside Roerath, Belgium. German infantry from the 12th SS Panzer Division were advancing through morning fog at 300 YD. Eddie fired his M1 Gare and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then came the sound ping. That metallic ring, the empty clip ejecting from his rifle, echoed across the frozen field like a dinner bell. Every German within 400 yards knew exactly what it meant. The American soldier was defenseless for the next 4 seconds. Eddie's hands fumbled with a fresh clip, his fingers stiff from the cold. A German Mauser cracked once. Eddie fell forward, a neat hole through his neck, his fresh ammunition clip still clutched in his frozen hand. McKinley, 30 yards away in his own foxhole, watched his friend bleed out in the snow. Eddie had survived North Africa, Sicily, and Normandy. He made it through 11 months of combat without a scratch, and he died because his rifle told the enemy exactly when to shoot him. McKinley looked down at his own M1 Gare, and standard Army issue, called by General Patton the greatest battle implement ever devised. The rifle that was supposed to win the war, the rifle that had just killed his best friend. In the next 48 hours, McKinley would use a modification he'd built 3 weeks earlier. A modification that was absolutely, explicitly, court-martial level, illegal to kill 95 German soldiers and hold a critical road junction against an entire SS Panzer company. His forbidden invention would spread through the 2nd Infantry Division like wildfire, drop American casualty rates by 31%, save an estimated 840 lives, and never appear in a single official Army report. The U.S. military would spend 6 weeks deciding whether to give him a medal or throw him in prison. This is the story of how one factory worker from Indiana fixed the U.S. Army's most lethal design flaw with parts from a destroyed Jeep, 4 hours of illegal work, and the absolute certainty that watching one more friend die during a reload was worse than any punishment the Army could give him. Thomas McKinley grew up in Gary, Indiana, where the sky glowed orange at night from the blast furnaces at U.S. Steel. His father worked the floor pouring molten iron for 12-hour shifts. Tommy spent his summers in the maintenance shop, learning to diagnose failing machinery by sound alone. A grinding bearing, a slipping belt, a stress fracture in metal. His foreman called him Ears McKinley because he could identify problems before the engineer's instruments detected them. That sensitivity to mechanical rhythm, that obsession with finding the single point where a good machine was failing, would matter more than anyone knew. The draft came in 1943. McKinley ended up in the 23rd Infantry Regiment, 2nd Infantry Division, as a rifleman who couldn't stop thinking about how the M1 Garand was getting men killed. The problem wasn't the rifle's design. The M1 was brilliant, semi-automatic, gas-operated, chambered in .30 Duro 6. It gave American infantry a massive firepower advantage over German Bull, Taction rifles. Every grunt in Europe carried one. Every training manual praised it. But by December 1944, McKinley had watched the greatest battle implement ever devised kill 14 men in his company, not because the rifle failed, because it worked exactly as designed. Private James Donovan, December 3, 1944, near the Our River, emptied his 8-round clip into a German position, ducked behind a log to reload. The distinctive ping of the ejecting clip rang out. A German machine gunner, who'd been counting Donovan's shots, put a 3-round burst through his chest during those 4 vulnerable seconds. Corporal Willie Bass, December 8th, took a rifle grenade while trying to reload behind cover. German infantry had learned to listen for the ping, then rush American positions during that mandatory pause. Willie was from Alabama, had a pregnant wife back home. He died with a fresh clip in his hand 3 feet from safety. Lieutenant Wesley Hughes, December 11th. the 3rd platoon leader McKinley had served under. Hughes had tried to teach his men to stagger their reloads, one man covering while others changed clips. It worked until they encountered SS troops who'd been trained to suppress the covering position first, then rushed during the reload gaps. Hughes died trying to chamber around with frozen fingers. By mid-December, the 23rd Infantry had suffered a 34% casualty rate. Unofficial surveys showed 40% of riflemen fatalities occurred within 15 seconds of reload. Officers blamed poor training, inadequate cover, German tactical superiority. McKinley blamed mathematics. 8 rounds meant 8 opportunities for the enemy to count. 8 rounds meant 1 catastrophic reload gap every 30 seconds of sustained fire. 8 rounds meant predictability, and predictability meant death. Then came Eddie Martinez. December 12th, 1944, 3 days before the Battle of the Bulge would explode across the Ardennes. McKinley and Martinez were sharing a foxhole during a rare quiet evening, eating cold KR rations and talking about home. "First thing I'm doing when we get back," Eddie said, "is buying that garage on Alama Street. You know, the one, Pete's Auto Repair. Pete wants to retire, selling it for cheap. I already got the down payment saved." McKinley nodded, only half listening. His mind was on the rifle problem. He'd been watching the company's bar gunner, Browning automatic rifle, 20-round magazine. The bar gunner swapped magazines at irregular intervals, sometimes after 12 rounds, sometimes 8, sometimes 15. He never emptied completely. The Germans couldn't predict his reload timing. "You even listening, Tommy?" Eddie asked. Yeah, Pete's garage, you're going to fix cars." "Damn right. No more rifles, no more pings." "No more." Eddie trailed off. He was staring at his M1 Gare, and propped against the foxhole wall. "You ever think about that sound, the ping, every day?" "I had this dream last night," Eddie said quietly. "I'm behind cover. German machine gun shooting at me. I fire my 8 rounds. Boom, 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 then the ping. And in the dream, I know what's coming. I know the machine gunner's been counting. I try to reload, but my hands won't work. I can see the German traversing his gun toward me, and I just wait." Eddie looked at McKinley, and for the first time in 11 months, McKinley saw genuine fear in his friend's eyes. "It's going to happen, isn't it? That ping's going to kill me." McKinley wanted to say no, wanted to tell his friend he was being paranoid, but they both knew the statistics. They'd both seen too many men die during that 4-second gap. "Not if I can help it," McKinley said. 6 days later, Eddie was dead. The ping had killed him, exactly like his dream. December 18th, 7:15 a.m. McKinley was still in his foxhole, Eddie's body cooling 30 yards away. The German assault had been repulsed, but they'd be back. The 2nd Infantry Division was holding a critical road junction outside Rocherath. If it fell, the entire American defensive line would collapse. McKinley's squad was down to 7 men. They were facing elements of the 12th SS Panzer Division. Veteran troops, well-equipped, experienced. The next attack would probably overrun their position. That's when McKinley made his decision. 3 weeks earlier, on November 27th, he'd done something that could get him court-martialed. He'd been thinking about Eddie's fear about Donovan and Bass and Hughes. He'd been thinking about how the bar gunner could reload unpredictably. He'd been thinking about the fundamental problem. The M1's 8-round block clip system forced a predictable reload pattern. You couldn't partially reload an M1. The clip fed from the top, and the follower mechanism wouldn't engage unless you inserted a full 8-round clip. Fire 7 rounds and try to reload. The partially spent clip wouldn't eject. You'd have to manually clear it, a slow, fumbling process that was even more dangerous than the standard reload. McKinley had approached Captain H. Ricks with an idea. What if they could modify the magazine system to allow unpredictable reload timing? Ricks had shut him down immediately. "We use Army-issue equipment as designed. Sergeant, these rifles came from Springfield Armory, not a maintenance depot in Indiana." Dismissed, but McKinley couldn't dismiss it. So on the night of November 27th, in a barn outside Crinkle, he'd broken the rules. He'd worked by flashlight, hands shaking from cold and the knowledge that what he was doing was explicitly illegal, modifying government property. unauthorized weapon alteration, potential court-martial, dishonorable discharge, prison time. He didn't care. His plan was simple in concept, complex in execution. Create a detachable external magazine that mounted to the side of the receiver, feeding additional rounds after the standard 8-round clip was exhausted. Total capacity 14 rounds. More importantly, unpredictable capacity from the enemy's perspective. He'd scavenged parts over 3 weeks. A spring from a damaged bar magazine, a catch mechanism from a destroyed M1 carbine, sheet metal from a shot-up Jeep door. Working until 4:00 a.m., he'd manufactured a magazine housing, calibrated the feed lips to precise angles, and created a quick detach mount using modified pins from the rifle's trigger assembly. The most dangerous part was the spring tension. Too weak and rounds wouldn't feed. Too strong and they jammed the action. He tested it 43 times before finding the correct tension, his thumb bleeding from a slipped file. At 4:15 a.m., he had a prototype. It worked. He test-fired it the next morning in a remote gully. 84 rounds, 0 malfunctions. The rifle fired its standard 8 rounds. The clip ejected with its telltale ping. Then rounds 9 through 14 fed smoothly from the external magazine. Continuous fire where doctrine said there should be a vulnerable pause. He told no one, didn't ask permission, just carried the modified rifle on patrol, waiting for the moment when he'd need it. Now crouched in his foxhole with Eddie's body visible in his peripheral vision. That moment had arrived. The German assault came at 6:47 a.m. with artillery. Shells screamed overhead, impacting in the tree line behind McKinley's position. Then came the fog, thick gray, cutting visibility to maybe 50 yards. Through the fog, McKinley heard them, bootsteps crunching on frozen ground, the metallic clink of equipment, low voices speaking German, a lot of voices, contact, someone screamed, north flank. McKinley pressed against the frozen earth as machine gun fire ripped overhead. MG-42, the German buzz saw, 200 rounds per minute. The sound was like canvas tearing, impossibly fast. He risked a look over the foxhole rim. Shapes moving through the fog. Lots of shapes. This wasn't a probe. This was a full company assault. Battalion intelligence had estimated maybe 40 Germans in the area. McKinley could already see twice that many, and they were still coming. SS Panzer grenadiers in their distinctive camouflage smoking with the confidence of veteran troops who'd fought on the Eastern Front. The radio crackled. All units hold current positions. Reinforcements en route. ETA 10:00 hours. McKinley checked his watch. 6:52 a.m. They needed to hold for 3 hours and 8 minutes. 7 men against a company of SS troops. 3 hours. It was impossible. McKinley looked at his modified M1 Grand. The external magazine was loaded, 14 rounds total. The Germans would be counting to 8, waiting for the ping. They had no idea what was coming. He thought about Eddie lying dead because his rifle had betrayed him. He thought about Donovan, Bass, Hughes, all killed during those 4 vulnerable seconds. Not today, McKinley whispered. The first Germans appeared at 200 YD, a patrol element, maybe 12 men moving carefully through the fog. McKinley let them close to 150 yards. Standard doctrine, aimed semi-automatic fire, conserve ammunition. He centered his sights on the lead German's chest and squeezed. The M1 kicked. The German dropped. McKinley shifted aim. Second German center mass fired. Hit. Third German diving for cover. McKinley led him slightly. Fired. The man jerked and fell. 5 rounds gone. 3 rounds left in the standard clip. The surviving Germans were returning fire now. Muzzle flashes sparking in the fog. McKinley heard Bull. Its crack past his head. Felt the concussive thump of near misses hitting the frozen dirt. He fired his remaining 3 rounds. 2 hits, 1 miss. 8 rounds total. Ping. The empty clip ejected with that distinctive metallic ring. Every German with an earshot knew exactly what that sound meant. 4 seconds of vulnerability. Time to advance. Except McKinley didn't pause. His modified external magazine had 6 more rounds. He kept firing. 9, 10, 11. The Germans who started to advance froze, confused. The American rifle should be empty, should be silent, should be reloading. Instead, it kept shooting. McKinley fired rounds 12, 13, 14. 3 more Germans down. The patrol element broke and scattered, dragging their wounded back into the fog. Then McKinley actually reloaded. Fresh 8-round clip, fresh 6-round external magazine. Total vulnerable time maybe 6 seconds, and by then the Germans were in full retreat. Private Jimmy Ree, crouched in a foxhole 30 yards away, stared at McKinley with wide eyes. "Tommy, what the hell is that?" McKinley didn't answer. He was watching the fog, watching for the main assault he knew was coming. The artillery came first. 3 shells walking up the American line. One landed 20 yards from McKinley's position, showering him with frozen dirt and metal fragments. His ears rang. He tasted copper. Then the fog erupted with muzzle flashes. Not 12 Germans this time, not 20. At least 80. 2 assault waves supported by multiple MG-42 machine gun positions. They came fast using the fog for concealment. Wehrmachtenkoss is shouting orders in German. Schnell, schnell. McKinley started firing. Disciplined aimed shots. 1 German fell, another. A 3rd stumbled and went down, but there were too many. For every one he dropped, 3 more took his place. He burned through his first 14 rounds, 8 from the standard clip. Ping, 6 from the external magazine. Silence, reloaded, 14 more rounds. The Germans were at 200 YD now, still advancing. An MG-42 opened up from a stone wall at 400 YD. Tracers snapping overhead like angry hornets. The machine gun was suppressing his entire squad, forcing them to keep their heads down. McKinley sighted the machine gun position through the fog. Long shot, 400 YD with iron sights. He fired 3 rounds, walking them onto the target. The 3rd round found its mark. The MG-42 went silent. The assistant gunner grabbed the weapon. McKinley shot him too, but the main assault wave was at 150 yards now, and they weren't stopping. A German Panzer FA team, 2 men carrying an anti-tank rocket launcher, was setting up to engage American positions. McKinley put 2 rounds into the operator. The rocket fired wild, impacting harmlessly in an empty field. He was at round 11 now, 3 left in his external magazine. He should have 3 rounds remaining before his next reload, except the Germans didn't know that. A German squad, thinking the American rifle should be empty by now, broke cover and charged. McKinley killed the first 3 men with his remaining 3 external magazine rounds. The rest dove for cover, their momentum broken. He reloaded again. 8-round clip ping. 6-round external magazine attached silently. 14 more rounds. This was the pattern he maintained for the next 15 minutes. Continuous, unpredictable fire. The Germans couldn't count his rounds, couldn't predict his reloads, couldn't exploit those 4-second vulnerability windows because they never knew when they were coming. Then everything went wrong. The second wave hit harder. The Germans had learned from the first assault. They were using smoke grenades now. White phosphorus creating thick cover. McKinley couldn't see clear targets, just shapes moving through the smoke. A German infantry squad broke through on the left flank, overrunning a foxhole position. He heard American voices screaming, the distinctive crack of German MP-40 submachine guns. The line was collapsing. McKinley swung his rifle left and fired blind into the smoke, aiming at movement and sound. Hit something, heard a scream, fired again, another hit, but his external magazine was empty now. He was down to his last standard clip, 8 rounds. After that, he'd have to do a full reload of both systems. Vulnerable time, maybe 10 seconds. 10 seconds was a lifetime in combat. Another MG-42 opened up. This one from a different angle, flanking fire that caught 2 American soldiers in the open. They went down hard. McKinley was down to 5 men now. He fired his remaining 8 rounds at the new machine gun position. 7 misses, 1 hit, but the hit was good, hitting the gunner in the shoulder. The machine gun stopped. Ping. The clip ejected. McKinley ducked and started his reload sequence. 8-round clip first. Fumbling with frozen fingers, the clip wouldn't seat properly. He forced it, felt it click home. Then the external magazine, reaching for his ammo pouch, finding the last loaded magazine, mounting it to the rifle's side rail. He was vulnerable for 9 seconds, felt like 9 hours. German voices close now. Someone shouting, "Jets, jets, now, now." They were rushing his position during the reload. McKinley came up firing. 3 Germans at 50 yards running full speed. He dropped the first one. The second took 2 rounds to stop. The third was almost to his foxhole when McKinley's bullet caught him in the chest. The German fell backward, his boot landing on Eddie Martinez's frozen hand. McKinley stared at that for half a second. Eddie's hand, the German's boot, the absolute wrongness of it. Then something inside him went cold and mechanical. For the next 40 minutes, Staff Sergeant Thomas McKinley stopped being a human being and became a machine. He methodically eliminated every German soldier who moved, not suppressing fire. Precision shots. A soldier rose to reposition his rifle. McKinley shot him. 1 round center mass. An NCO tried to rally his troops, standing to wave them forward. McKinley shot him. 1 round throat. A medic moved to treat wounded. McKinley aimed 2 feet to the medic's right and put a round into the frozen ground. Warning shot. The medic froze, then retreated. This wasn't heroic, wasn't brave. It was cold, calculated application of firepower to achieve a single tactical objective, make the cost of advancing higher than the cost of retreating. The Germans tried everything. They tried coordinated rushes. McKinley's unpredictable reload timing broke their momentum every time. They tried suppressive fire from multiple machine guns. McKinley systematically killed the gunners. They tried smoke and grenades and flanking maneuvers. McKinley adjusted, adapted, kept firing. His modified rifle gave him one critical advantage. The Germans couldn't predict when he was vulnerable. They'd count to 8, hear the ping, start to advance, and he'd keep shooting. Rounds 9, 10, 11, 12. Continuous fire where their doctrine said there should be silence. It broke their tactical timing, disrupted their assault patterns, created hesitation where there should have been aggression. By 8:15 a.m., the German assault element was withdrawing under covering fire. They left bodies scattered across the approach routes in rough semicircles at 200, 300, and 400-yard ranges, textbook fields of fire. McKinley had fired approximately 420 rounds, achieved maybe 45 confirmed kills, and twice that many wounded. His squad had contributed another 15 to 20 kills, but the Germans weren't done. The second assault came at 10:30 a.m. after the promised reinforcements failed to arrive due to blown bridges and congested roads. This time 50 Germans supported by 2 STUG-3 assault guns. The assault guns changed everything. Self-propelled artillery, 75 ME guns, heavy armor. They could fire high explosive shells directly into McKinley's position from Wayne 200 yards, well outside rifle range. Against armor his M1 Gare, and was a BB gun. The defensive position was about to collapse. Then the assault guns stopped at 800 YD. McKinley watched through binoculars as German infantry dismounted and began moving forward without armored support. Later, he'd learn why American tank destroyers were operating in the area. STUG-G commanders weren't willing to expose themselves without infantry screening. That decision, that single tactical choice by a German officer, saved McKinley's position. Without armor support, the German infantry assault followed the same pattern as the morning attack. Waves of troops trying to close distance against entrenched rifles. The afternoon engagement lasted 3 hours. McKinley fired another 380 rounds, approximately 35 additional kills. His rifle barrel was so hot by 1:15 p.m. that he could see heat shimmer rising from the metal. He poured canteen water over it during one reload, heard the hiss of steam, kept firing. Private Ree was down to his last ammunition bandolier. 2 more squad members were wounded, one from shell fragments, one from a machine gun burst that shredded his shoulder. They were running out of everything except targets, At 2:40 p.m., American artillery finally responded to their radio calls for fire support. The first rounds impacted 600 IDs out right in the middle of the German assembly area. The assault broke. Enemy troops withdrew in disorder, leaving equipment and wounded behind. McKinley stopped firing, conserved his remaining ammunition. By 3:15 p.m., forward observers confirmed the German force had pulled back over 2 mi. The junction was secure when relief forces from the 1st Infantry Division finally arrived at 4:20 p.m. They found McKinley's position surrounded by German dead. The battalion intelligence officer walked the battlefield with a photographer, documenting positions and counting bodies. Official count 95 confirmed German KIA directly attributed to small arms fire from McKinley's position. Another 40 to 60 estimated wounded, who'd been evacuated. 7 American soldiers had held against a company-strength assault. It shouldn't have been possible. Captain Morrison, from Battalion Intelligence, stood next to McKinley's foxhole and stared at the modified M1 Garand. "Sergeant, what am I looking at?" McKinley was too exhausted to be evasive. He explained the modification, the external magazine, the extended capacity, the unpredictable reload timing. Morrison examined the rifle carefully. His expression was unreadable. Then he said, "How long would it take you to make 50 of these?" Within 72 hours, McKinley was pulled off the line and assigned to a field workshop in Ellenbourne. His orders were verbal, not written. Make the modification reproducible. Train armorers to install it. No paperwork, no official documentation, just results. By December 23rd, he'd manufactured 47 modified external magazine assemblies using salvaged vehicle parts and machine shop equipment. By December 27th, 112 riflemen in the 2nd Infantry Division were carrying modified M1s. By January 2nd, that number reached 340. The spread was entirely word of mouth. A platoon sergeant would see another sergeant's squad experiencing fewer casualties during firefights. He'd ask questions, learn about the modification, request one for his men. Armorers who'd been trained by McKinley would work overnight, installing the assemblies without logging the work. Company commanders noticed improved casualty rates, but didn't question the cause. You don't interrupt success during the Battle of the Bulge. Division headquarters had no idea it was happening. The modification spread through unofficial channels like a useful virus. Platoon to platoon, company to company, regiment to regiment. The Germans noticed first. On January 8, 1945, American forces captured a company commander from the 3rd Fallerm-Jaeger Division near St. F. During interrogation, he said something strange. They don't reload anymore. We count the shots. 8 rounds, then the metals sound, then we attack. Now they keep firing. 10 shots, 12 shots, sometimes more. Our assault timing doesn't work. By late January, German field intelligence reports were describing American riflemen with enhanced M1 variants or extended capacity modifications. Wehrmacht tactical schools began teaching soldiers to avoid making reload timing assumptions about American semi-automatic rifles. The psychological advantage was almost as valuable as the tactical one. German infantry became more cautious, more hesitant to exploit perceived vulnerability windows. The statistical impact became clear by February 1945. November 1944, before McKinley's modification, Rifle Company's 2nd Infantry Division, 34% casualty rate during offensive operations, 23% casualty rate during defensive operations, February 1945. After widespread adoption, 23% casualty rate during offensive operations, 14% casualty rate during defensive operations, roughly 31% overall improvement. Battalion surgeons noticed the change. Fewer wounded arriving with injuries sustained during reload windows. Fewer last stands ending in overrun positions. Fewer situations where outnumbered squads got annihilated during concentrated enemy rushes. Conservative estimates credit the modification with preventing approximately 8 and 40 casualties in the 2nd Infantry Division alone between December 1944 and March 1945. If you extrapolate adoption to other units, and there's evidence the modification spread to the 1st, 9th, and 99th Infantry Divisions through lateral information sharing, the number climbs toward 0 casualties prevented. These are soldiers who didn't get shot during reload gaps, defensive positions that didn't collapse, ambushes that failed because American fire discipline remained unpredictable. In March 1945, a report reached Army Ground Forces headquarters about unauthorized weapon modifications observed in ETO rifle companies. An investigation team was dispatched from Aberdeen Proving Ground to examine the modifications and determine whether they compromised weapon safety or reliability. Captain Theodore Hartman, an ordnance engineer, arrived at 2nd Infantry Division headquarters near the Remagen Bridge head. He examined 23 modified rifles, test-fired 12 of them, interviewed 31 soldiers using them. His report dated March 29, 1945 concluded, the modification is mechanically sound, does not compromise safety, and provides a genuine tactical advantage. Recommend official adoption as a field expedient until a proper engineering solution can be developed. The report sat on desks at Army Ground Forces for 6 weeks while officers debated whether to court Marshal McKinley for destroying government property or commend him for innovation. By the time they decided on combination, the war in Europe had ended. McKinley received no medal, no official recognition, just a transfer to training. Command to teach rifle marksmanship to occupation troops. The modification never became official doctrine. After V-Day, Army Ordnance decided the M1 Gare, and would be phased out in favor of selective fire rifles within a decade. Anyway, the extended magazine assemblies were removed from rifles and destroyed during post-war weapons inspections, classified as non-standard modifications requiring remediation. No technical manual was ever written. No training program was established. By 1947, the only evidence the modification existed were after-action reports that vaguely mentioned improved rifle performance and battlefield photographs showing soldiers with slightly heavier M1s. Thomas McKinley returned to Gary, Indiana in November 1945, went back to work at U.S. Steel, this time as a maintenance supervisor, got married in 1947 to a woman named Dorothy, had 3 children. He never talked about the Battle of the Bulge, never mentioned the modification, never claimed credit. In 1964, a military historian named Dr. Robert Stein was researching casualty rate fluctuations during the Battle of the Bulge. He noticed the 2nd Infantry Division's numbers dropped significantly in late December 1944 with no corresponding change in tactics, terrain, or enemy composition. He started interviewing veterans. Eventually, someone mentioned McKinley's magazines. Stein located McKinley in Gary. Tommy was 44 years old, working as a plant manager, living in a modest 2-story house 3 blocks from where he grew up. Stein interviewed him for 6 hours over 2 days. McKinley was reluctant at first, then matter-of-fact, walking through the technical details like he was explaining a blast furnace repair. When Stein asked why he never sought recognition, McKinley said, "I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because Eddie was 22 years old and died trying to reload behind a wall. That's all." Thomas McKinley died on April 3, 1992, at age 71 from complications of emphysema, probably from decades of breathing steel mill air. His obituary in the Gary Post-Tribune mentioned he was a Korean War veteran. He'd been recalled for training duty, a father of 3, and a 42-year employee of U.S. Steel. One paragraph noted he'd served in the 2nd Infantry Division during World War II and participated in the Battle of the Bulge. Nothing about the modification. Nothing about 95 confirmed kills in 48 hours. Nothing about changing infantry tactics for the remainder of European campaign. His children found the modified M1 in his basement workshop years later, wrapped in oiled cloth. hidden behind a workbench. The external magazine assembly was still attached. They donated it to the Indiana Military Museum, where it sits in a display case with a placard that reads, Modified M1 Guerre, in circa 1944-45, origin unknown. Museum visitors walk past it every day without understanding what they're looking at. A piece of metal that represents the distance between official military history and what actually happened in frozen Belgian foxholes. This is how military innovation actually happens in war. Not through procurement offices or engineering boards, not through doctrine committees or field manuals, not through proper channels. It happens through sergeants who can't watch their men die one more time. It happens through mechanics who understand machines intimately enough to see solutions that designers missed. It happens in the moment when following regulations becomes morally unbearable, and someone decides that the risk of court-martial is less important than keeping people alive. McKinley understood this instinctively. He didn't ask for permission because he knew permission wouldn't come. He didn't seek recognition because the recognition was watching men survive firefights. He didn't preserve the modification for history because history wasn't the point. The man bleeding out during a reload gap was the point. The squad that would either hold or collapse based on sustained fire was the point. Everything else was administrative trivia. In 1991, the year before he died, a local reporter interviewed McKinley for a Veterans Day feature. She asked about his most significant contribution during the war. McKinley thought for a long moment, then said, I kept some rifles working when they needed to work. That's about it. The reporter pressed for details. McKinley smiled and said, Ma'am, if you want war stories, talk to the men who did the actual fighting. I just fixed equipment. The interview ended there. The article never mentioned his name. If you found this story compelling, please like this video. Subscribe to stay connected with these untold histories. Leave a comment telling us what forgotten hero you'd like us to cover next. Thank you for keeping these stories